Hey guys, Sasha with FordRetrofit.com. Today we actually don't want to talk about any kind of retrofits, but a major repair. And I want to do this video because I have a couple of cars with this engine which is affected by that problem, and I just searched a lot about it, and you find videos already, you find information in forums, but it's all very much spread out there. There's no major video which gives you all the information for any kind of Ford model, and that's what I'm trying to do with this video. Okay, so in general, what is this all about? Well, it's about the water pump. Here we actually have a brand new one. The water pumps on these engines, and when I talk about these engines, this is actually a very, very common engine family from Ford and Lincoln. This is a 3.7 liter V6. That is the same engine basically as the 3.5 liter V6, which is basically built in any kind of larger Ford model and Lincoln model, and even a couple of older Mercurys, or one of the latest Mercurys actually. This particular car is 2009 Lincoln MKS. This engine was built, started in 2007, and it is in use until today. Again, this is a 3.7, but it's the same engine, 3.5, 3.7. It's exactly the same, just the bore is a little bigger. That's where the difference from the size coming from. So what is the problem on these? Well, the water pumps actually fail quite often, right? And this is, I guess, the first question. How often, when do they fail, which model years are affected? Well, it's hard to say because there is no official statement from Ford, but what they did definitely confirmed that there's a problem. First of all, I saw models from 70,000 miles to 100,000 miles. This particular one has 90,000 miles on it, where the water pump starts leaking. When we talk about build years, there is, so far from what we gathered in information, no change to these water pumps. So in general, any kind of Ford model year with that particular engine type can be affected. And I saw models from 2007, 2008. I also saw 2013 models out there, so facelift already. And there is definitely no major change there. I think obviously the older ones are more affected at this point because there are simply much older, and as older they get and as more mileage they get, as more likely obviously this fault is. So why is it such a big deal? Well, the problem is, as you may want to see here, this actually tells you already, if you have a little bit of understanding, this is chain driven. So that is actually driven by the timing chain. Very, very bad design from Ford. What does that mean? Usually the water pump is outside of the engine, driven by a normal belt, like the power steering pump or the alternator. In this engine, the water pump is actually driven by the timing chain, and the timing chain runs inside of the engine behind an engine cover here. So what that means is you have basically to take the whole engine more or less on the side apart to get this thing out. You have to remove the timing chain. This is a huge job. Ford actually calculates 14 hours for that, and I guess you can charge around $2,500 to $3,500 depending on how much you want to do at the same time, because if you have all of these things apart, you're better off just doing it right and changing all the things at the same time. Speaking of that, it's the next part we want to have a look in. What have you have to do to change that? So in general, I can show you that a little bit from the side. I already moved a lot. This is this whole thing, and it goes all the way up. It's the engine front cover, and you see all these screws here. There are 22 screws around that, and basically this whole plate, and not only this whole plate, which basically goes all the way up to here, this all needs to be gone. And when that is away, you basically have all the timing chain components behind that. You have then to remove the heads for that. Actually not the heads, just the valve covers. What I did here actually already, they're already completely loose. And to remove the valve covers, you have to remove all that stuff up here. Water pipes, actually everything down here that already looks very empty, but believe me, when I started that was not that empty. So power steering pump, alternator, all of that is gone to make room. And then the last step is basically to remove the motor mount on the right side, and then you have barely enough space to remove that cover. And then the fun starts. You remove the timing chain, and then you actually get to that water pump. One last important thing, how do you actually notice that? And you have to check that, because the problem with that design is, as I mentioned, it's driven by the timing chain. So what can happen? If the seals go bad, Ford actually know about the risk, and what they did, and I can show you that perfectly on this new water pump here. So you have two seals. You have an inner seal and you have an outer seal. What usually, and inside here, this is all water, right? Which obviously gets moved around by this propeller, or impeller actually. And usually if that first gasket fails, the water pushes out, but is held on from the second seal, so it does not get into the timing cover where the oil is already in. Very bad. If you have coolant and oil, you know what's gonna happen. And they actually designed it to warn you, because as you can see, when the first seal leaks, there's actually a channel here which goes down there, and then on the other side you have this little bearing there, this valve. So what happens is the water goes bad, goes out there, and then it will come out of a weep hole. And this is very hard to see for you guys, because now the light situation is a little bit limited here. But basically down here where my finger now is a weep hole, and you will see coolant dipping out here on that stuff. The problem is usually here is the alternator, so you cannot see that. However, you can usually see the weep hole there, and you will see coolant there. So if you see coolant at this point, you have to react very quick and do change that water pump, because as I said, if the second seal goes bad, then all your coolant will be flushed into the engine oil, and then your engine, if you don't notice that quick enough, will at some point be destroyed, because the oil is not able to lubricate correctly anymore, because it's mixed with water. And that actually happens quite so often because people ignore the warning signs. So if you see stuff there, if you see water under the car, that are warning signs. If you see that your bottle, your degas bottle loses water from time to time, keep an eye on that stuff. It's not very hard to do. And I actually will try to make a picture later on from the weep hole to show you this a little bit more in detail. So that's about it for now. I will go ahead, take all of this stuff apart, and then actually make a second part of that video to show you a little bit more about the timing cover inside, what kind of tools do you need to work on that. So stay tuned, and if you have any kind of questions, just leave me a comment and I'm happy to help you. And as you can see, in general, it's totally possible to change that stuff at home. That is my driveway actually. I have not a lot of special tools, but I'm pretty good equipped, but probably not better than some other hobby mechanics out there. But I will not go in all the details, because if you have no idea what to do after I showed you that, you're better off going to a professional repair facility. So stay tuned. Thanks, and like the video if you like it. Thanks.